Welcome back to the initiative. I'm Adam.
I'm Lindsay.
And
This is episode 3.
yes.
Did you ever think we would get this far? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because we planned to get this far. But, I mean, we teased a little bit at the end of the last episode. We were talking about the shipping industry, and that led us into kind of randomly start talking about the internet and the future of the internet and what it can be used for. And at about minute 59, we started talking about Starlink, which is Elon Musk's innovation for the future of the internet, which is sooner than you expect.
And I think it's like SpaceX too. I think and that's their thing. Elon Musk's definitely pushing it forward, like he does with all of his stuff. But I'd like to see them push, regardless of Elon Musk. He definitely has tight deadlines, and it's nice to see pushing the boundaries on all that. But yeah, Starlink gonna be bunch of satellites orbiting low Earth orbit, so the latency between you and the server are slow. So for like gaming, it'll be comparable. For instance, and then SpaceX was gonna launch like 60 satellites. Well, what is today? The 18th of May. So I don't know when we're gonna publish this episode, but on the 18th they delayed the launch so they could update the 60 satellites loaded in the spaceship. So that was delayed a week.
So
but
60, is that going to cover the area that they want to
nope.
cover? Okay.
They need 10,000.
Okay.
10,000.
I wasn't sure of the range.
Yeah, they'll be able to do testing, but they'll need lots and lots more.
I have a dumb question.
Okay.
Does the internet as it is now, doesn't it use satellites?
No. I believe it uses large fiber optic pipelines that actually go underneath the oceans to get to other countries. But, the lag between you in the United States versus you in like China, traveling at the speed of light is still takes time. And then all the switches and stuff that happen on the internet. So like that's why you want to have servers closer to you,
right,
so you get the best experience.
But like mobile data, that comes from satellites.
No, mobile data comes from cell towers positioned every like 5 miles.
Okay, I feel really dumb. What comes from satellites then?
TV. So like
Oh my God.
direct TV, radio, GPS, anything that doesn't require super quick response times.
Okay. So to run the internet through satellites, you can't just recycle the hundreds of satellites that are already up there. It's got to be something new.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if you were to get internet through DirecTV, it's kind of slow and it's really choppy. So
Yeah.
I haven't used it recently, but from what I gather, it's they even suggest, don't use satellites if you want to do like 4K streaming or any of that, or like definitely not for online gaming, because those, I think those are in geosynchronous orbit, which is really far, really high, like 100 plus miles above Earth. More than that, 1,000 maybe. But you need to be a really high orbit to have the satellite stay. So like if it's over Chicago, for the satellite to follow Chicago forever, it needs to be really high in the atmosphere. Unlike Starlink, where it's going to be like 50 to 100 miles above the Earth. But at that low Earth orbit, they have to go really fast around the planet to maintain that height. So that's why you need thousands and thousands of satellites.
Because they're not going to be locked over one piece
right.
of
It's
land.
going to be over Chicago 1 hour, and then another hour will be in China. So you got to have like just huge mesh of satellites to maintain that type of coverage.
So how far apart will one satellite be from another? What's the radius?
I don't know. I mean, just looking at the visuals, it's probably, you know, the diameter of that network is going to be pretty wide. So I don't know, probably 50 miles or so, but like 50 miles in the sky above you is really short distance, or maybe it's 100 miles. I don't know. Like
Right.
10,000 satellites is not a lot, you know, in relation to the diameter of the planet.
Right.
So it would probably be a few hundred miles between each satellite. But, you know, when you're looking up, that's still like 50 satellites you're looking at. And you'd probably be sharing, you know, it would be like, you'd still have to have a node on your house or bus or whatever thing you're consuming the internet from. You would,
like you could have it on your phone.
you couldn't have it on your phone because the tech that they're suggesting would be too large. So it'd be like a node,
But
a
in the
receiver.
future-
You would have to have a receiver
As things get smaller in the future, you could have a node
on your phone in your head. I
Yeah.
don't know.
on your glasses.
Yeah. We'll see. But at the current state, you would need like something large that you can put on your vehicle, or nothing mobile in the sense that you can put it in your pocket. But yeah, it's because it's going to be closer to the planet, this network, and you'll have that short response time, so getting to websites is quick and not as choppy. Or gaming, you know, you can play reliably online, and then, you know, these are going to be high bandwidth too, so, you know, a lot of satellites, you can handle like millions of people that handle all those connections. You know, if it starts getting congested, then you just keep adding more satellites to that network until it can handle the load.
That's kind of leads into one of my other questions, which is this going to lead into a future where the internet isn't a commodity that's competitive in the market? Is it going to be, I wouldn't say monopoly, because well, I mean, it would kind of be a monopoly if it's one company providing this, but if it's more of a service, like if you can compare it with something like We Energies.
So that's a Milwaukee based
I don't think it's just
energy
Milwaukee,
company.
is it?
It's southeastern Wisconsin.
Okay, so maybe that's a really bad example then.
We just gave away our general area of where we live.
Oh
in
my
the
gosh.
Greater Milwaukee area.
Paparazzi are already out of control.
But it's like southeast Wisconsin, north Wisconsin.
I thought it was farther than that. Okay, so that's a bad metaphor. But like, if all of this is coming from Starlink, are we getting to a future where the internet is something that's a basic right?
I mean, they've debated that at the FTC. Is that it? Yeah, they've debated that, you know, whether or not internet should be a resource or a, you know, like
A service.
Service, you know, water, sewage,
Utility. There we go.
If it should be a utility, and a lot of companies like AT&T and Verizon and
Well, of course, they're very upset
Comcast,
about that.
they don't want it to be considered that because then it'll be heavily regulated and they won't make as much money.
Well, I see this branching off in two different ways, which are very predictable. Either it becomes a utility and it becomes something that is bad for corporations, or it becomes it goes further down the path that it's on right now, which is that the big companies are eating each other and they're merging, and we're getting closer towards a future where it's going to be a monopoly in that certain things are restricted so that one company can have power over another company, or so that there can obviously competition is necessary.
I mean, the United States has they have monopoly laws in place. So, I mean, if they get too big, I'm sure we'll break them down. But if we get Starlink into place,
getting around monopolies where it becomes
a
different company, but
close.
It's really the same company. And like, look at how much Disney owns.
I mean, yeah, I don't want to talk about that. That is
that's not a. This is not economics podcast.
But yeah, I mean, Starlink comes in. It's going to be a new internet service provider that you have access to. So you don't just have the phone line, the cable line, and, satellite.
So do you think for a
radio
while that you would
frequency.
use it as a supplement rather than a replacement?
At the current rate of how things are going, we have the mobile companies coming in with high-speed internet through the mobile towers. So 5G. So 5G, that could be an alternative to high-speed internet access for homes, not just. Excuse me.
So 5G, you're saying, would be a replacement for high-speed internet?
Well, I mean, 5G is the
Starlink.
next as an alternative to like cable internet. So again, 5G, that's it's going to be a much higher wavelength, so it can't penetrate walls. So you'd need to have like a node on your house or whatever, and then point it at the cell tower.
Your house doesn't have walls. Maybe that's why futuristic movies are always, the houses are completely made out of glass. Because they're using 5G.
Yeah. 6G, 7G at that point.
I know. Way to date yourself. Say which G
At
you're
that,
on.
At that point, the wavelength won't even penetrate the glass or the air. You'll need to be right next to the nodes. There'll be nodes everywhere. I don't think that's how that's going to go. But I imagine, I mean, it's going to be great having those types of options. AT&T, Comcast, Time Warner, they're not Spectrum or whatever. They're going to be, there's going to be more competition, so lower prices. So that's good. And there's going to be less competition in areas with less access to high-speed internet.
That's probably the part of it that I'm the most excited about, is that we've been talking for ages about internet deserts or areas where there's less internet access, so there is less development, because so much of everything that we do, whether it be education or commerce, all of that's happening online now. So if you don't have access to a device or to an internet connection,
you don't have access to jobs or
you're
education.
Out of the loop of the global community, because that's where everybody else is now.
Yeah,
and a lot of those places get forgotten.
And companies like Google and Amazon, they have these initiatives like initiatives.
Ding 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 ding.
Yeah, we come full circle. They have these initiatives where they go out, like Africa, for example, very small access to internet, low access. So they're coming up with these designs of creating internet balloons. Just creating this giant balloon that will flow high in the atmosphere.
Oh my God.
And it will connect to a base station, but then that will shoot out internet to the surrounding area. That is so
like 1890s sci-fi.
Yeah, I mean, it's the current technology that they're implementing, or 24-hour
blimp.
internet. Yeah, it's basically an internet blimp, and then they have ideas about planes that are also kind of
Blimpernet.
Blimpernet.
Sorry.
Maybe.
Planes?
Or like drones that have solar panels and stuff that can just constantly circle even at night.
That's really similar to having low orbit satellites.
Yeah. It's similar concept. It's just, so there's a lot of cool ideas out there and how they're going to approach it. SpaceX has the advantage because they build rockets.
Yeah.
And they can build satellites, internet satellites. So, they're just using their resources.
I imagine maintenance and upgrading would be kind of a huge expense, at least at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're not going to go and repair those satellites. They're probably going to drop them out of orbit and have them burn up, and then just replace them with newer and better hardware. I'm sure they have a life cycle that they consider.
Every year, we will celebrate the ash rain as the satellites disintegrate in the atmosphere and they send new ones up. We mark this occasion with one day with no internet, while we all stay indoors and read books so that we're protected from the ashes.
Yeah, that's some sci-fi book.
Yeah.
Fun dystopian future type thing.
Oh yeah, and it's never really that romantic ever.
No.
But I like the idea of the low orbit satellites simply because it kind of puts a visual or like a physical medium to the internet so that we can. My goodness, Tesla. You really are loud.
Hey, dog. Do you want to participate? Go away.
If we mic'd her up, I don't think this podcast would be the same. We would talk about very different things.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But it puts a physical body on the idea of the internet as being a global communication device. Having enough satellites, 10,000, 20,000, whatever it is, so that there's like a connected physical net around the world. That is some sci-fi bullshit. Like, that is the future.
Yeah. We're getting to the future. We're getting to all the cool stuff. We're driving in electric cars. And we're,
right? Talking to our watches.
Yeah, I don't even use that. But
Is there anything more about Starlink that we need to know, or should I blend this into the next topic?
I mean, it's cool to see, what's gonna be provided for us for internet access. That's the immediate future. I mean, like mid-term, long-term future is, once we start exploring our solar system, going to the moon and the Mars, that we'll have to have internet access there. I mean, there's no reason why we wouldn't have localized internet access on different planets.
Right.
So you would have similar networking set up over there, and then you would have to somehow connect access back to Earth internet. I mean, you couldn't like actively access because the time it would take to access something in there. So
it still
there
wouldn't
would have
be
to be
instant.
What?
It still wouldn't be instant.
No, what does it take, like 10, 15 minutes to get from Mars to, I think, get to the moon? It's like 15
in that the Martian
seconds.
Wasn't there a delay when he was communicating with them? There was a delay by like
you can't have a live chat or get live access to a site or but so it would be cool to see how that connects. And then future is quantum technology buzzwords stuff where simultaneous, instantaneous data access.
And then
wherever you are.
future is when we all become a digital hive mind, and we don't need to communicate instantly because we're all thinking the same thing.
Exactly. And then we just become one.
Mm-hmm. That's our evolution.
And nothing all at the same time.
We no longer need thumbs.
Okay. Whoa.
Okay, so I want to talk about what this brought up for me was the idea of the different theories that everyone has about the future of the internet, which led me to think about predictions of the internet existing before it was possible to know that the internet was going to exist, like pre-computers. And of course, there's a lot of discussion about that. But since this podcast is about sci-fi, I did a quick Google search on works of literature that predicted the internet. And so I'm going to do a quick overview of that and then discuss the implications.
Cool.
Let me pull up my thing. Okay. So there seems to be a lot of discussions where there's a whole bunch of blogs that all kind of say the same thing, where here are the 5 works that predicted the internet and how that happened. And then there's a bunch of blogs that all say nobody predicted the internet and nobody could have seen this coming. And all of the things that we say are predictions of the internet are really just kind of watered down versions of whatever technology was out there at the time. Yeah. So I'll show you what that means. So the first example is The Machine Stops by Edward Morgan Foster, and this was in 1909. And this is about a big worldwide machine that all of the human population relied on in the story. It's a post-apocalypse, everybody lives in an underground pod, kind of like in the Matrix, and they communicate through a big global machine network. And this came out in 1909, so this is when radio was the most popular medium by which people communicated, and telephones were new. So this was kind of insight into what happens when everyone becomes reliant on this. And you'll see that a lot of times in sci-fi where it'll be like, this is the future of communication technology and this is why it's bad. Yeah. So you don't really get a lot of positive interpretations, at least not in the end of the story. But
and they're not interesting if they're completely positive.
That's true. Yeah.
So I think we get a lot of that for each generation of technology. There's always horror stories of it's always worst case scenarios,
especially in things that are very critical of industrialism, or like the post-colonial critiques that you get a lot of times with cyberpunk type stories. But there's another one called it's just called Neuromancer by William Gibson. This was in 1988, so much later. And it was a sci-fi suspense that was it kind of revolved around a computer hacker who is inside this global computer network in cyberspace, and they actually called that the Matrix. So it's the story of him navigating this world and kind of hacking it, which that is coined as the first example of what a hacker would be. And then there's another one from 1904 by Mark Twain, funny enough.
Going back.
It's a story called From the London Times of 1904. And it's about a U.S. Army officer who's falsely convicted for murdering someone who has invented the telelectroscope, which is the most 1904 name for the internet that you could ever come up with. And this is a device that allows the user to see and talk to people all over the planet. And the convicted soldier is allowed to use that telelectroscope before he's executed in order to communicate with people all over the world. And the criticism of this that I read is that it's basically just a prediction of the video phone. It's not really a prediction of the internet. So you'll see a lot of these where they're very abbreviated.
Yeah, and I mean, it is kind of the prediction of, I guess, the internet. But the internet is just a tool. It's hard to predict what the next best technology is coming out. But it's... He was predicting a thing that could easily get us to there. He saw something that I can talk to this person to that person.
A lot of people predict the tool and the functionality of it. Not a lot of people, very few people predicted how we would actually use it.
How we would use it and how we would invent it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, I mean, that's always the tricky part. So it's always cool hearing about these, not predictions, but just a extrapolation of.
Yeah, I mean, it's sci-fi. It's an imaginary. It's using the imagination to solve current problems with tools that may or may not be capable of being invented. So any sci-fi that you look at is a reflection of the time in which it was written.
Yeah,
that's a whole fascinating literary analysis that you can do on basically any piece of work. A little bit closer was in 1946, Murray Leinster wrote A Logic Named Joe, and it's a predictive tale about vastly networked personal computers and the trouble that comes with them, of course. These are computer-like devices that they call logics, and the protagonist is a logic repairman, and basically... here's an excerpt from it.
When did this come out?
This was in 1946. So television was a thing.
Television was a thing, but computers weren't quite a thing yet.
Yeah, at least not in the in the way that
50s and 60s is when electronic computers started coming out.
So this is an excerpt of this story, which makes it sound really similar to Google. You got a Logic in your house. It looks like a Vision receiver used to, only it's got keys instead of dials, and you punch the keys for what you want to get. It's hooked into the tank, which has the Carson circuit all fixed up with relays. Say you punch Station Snafu on your Logic. Relays in the tank take over, and whatever Vision program Snafu is telecasting comes on your screen. So that sounds kind of like television. But besides that, if you punch for the weather forecast, or who won today's race at Hialeah, or who was the mistress of the White House during Garfield's administration, or what is PDQ and R selling for today, that comes on the screen too. So this is kind of the first use of the internet as a way to have immediate access to information.
Yeah, that totally is. Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of led me to think about the different tools that we've invented that have changed history in some way. So the first one obviously being the printing press. So when the printing press first came into use, I think that was in like the 1400s or 1500s. And that changed a lot in terms of how people were aware of things that were going on outside of their communities. And pamphlets became a thing. So religious tracts and political tracts were being widely read, and it was a lot easier to spread stories and ideologies, and the idea of being a writer started to become a thing. And people talk about that all the time as being what jump-started a lot of modern media in terms of authorship. And
a lot of this is, I mean, it's a trend. This is clearly a trend of how to get information quicker, how to spread information quicker.
Yep.
If you're an organization, you want to, tell other people about your organization. So that it's always a step in how to get information quicker and more efficiently to people. So I think that's, a good tool for predicting the future. It's like, well, currently we have limited access to get certain information. What's the next step of getting information quicker and more efficiently?
Which is why I think if we look at it through that lens, if we ask that question, then it's a lot easier to figure out what the future of the internet is, because we're always going to be trying to solve that problem.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
In a broad sense. Like, obviously, there's a lot more specific things going on, like using the internet in terms of like a social network. That's very different from using the internet as a tool to look up information.
Yeah, I mean, social network is just a different form of spreading information. It's just social information.
And it's changed a lot of what we think of ourselves, because it's not just these are the arbiters of information. They control what we know and what we know is true. It's everybody's got a voice.
Yeah.
In the cheesiest way possible of saying. But like I didn't know this. The internet was invented for particle physicists.
Yep. They, what is it? ARPANET?
Yeah.
Yeah. That
initiated at CERN.
Oh yeah.
With the Large Hadron Collider, because they needed to talk to each other faster to the other labs around the world.
That's right. So, science facilities, colleges, all had, the early aspects of the internet at that point.
And if you look around, that happens everywhere. Like the radio became popular because of, I think it was because of the military. I could be wrong.
Yeah. I mean, military is always looking for a newer technology to become better than the enemy or perceived enemy. That's why the United States is the biggest military threat is, they have the best technology and the best, they have research divisions specifically to find new technology out there.
Yeah. Who's investing in figuring it out?
A cool story I heard recently, sidetracking, is, battery technology. Our phones get more and more powerful, but, they're still only lasting a day. The only reason why we can make it more powerful is because we're also making them more efficient. Battery technology is extremely limited. We're just kind of
Yeah.
getting so much out of. You can only shove so much energy in a certain space.
Yeah.
So
The things
it's
that
cool.
you're doing and the battery that you have in order to do that, they're intertwined. So like if you went back and you used a Nokia phone from the early 2000s or late 90s, it could last for weeks probably if you only wanted to do the things that phone was doing at that time.
Yeah.
But if you're asking it to load giant images or videos and stream and all that stuff, obviously it would only last like 30 minutes.
Yeah. So where the military comes in is, the military, they need their soldiers to carry equipment that's electronic, needs batteries, so they need to be mobile. So if you want large energy capacity, that means these heavy batteries are very heavy. So they came up with technology to make them more efficient so they can make them smaller. So, that's...
I didn't know that was the military that did that.
It was just a recent news article I saw.
Oh.
And then, then the
So this
people
just
from
happened.
Tesla were like, I'm interested in that. I'm very
I thought
interested.
it was going to be the other way around. Tesla would invent a smaller battery, and then the military would snap it up.
That also happens. I mean, the military, they do their own things. They're pushing the boundaries, but of course, if the military sees the technology they want, they're gonna work with that company to.
Yeah, DARPA and all that jazz.
Yep. But then there's also the complications of the military wants to use your technology. The employees at Google, they're like, we don't want you to work with the military anymore because we joined Google for doing positive things.
I mean, the futuristic sci-fi dystopia writes itself.
Yeah.
There's so many implications to that. And I think that's why there's so many people that are still very afraid of technology. Like, obviously, that's been done to death, talking about the idea of, privacy and monitoring and, we're in 1984 and all of that stuff.
Yeah, and I think, each generation of that fear of technology, we always get to a point where we were in the past that we were afraid of, but we're like, oh no, it's not an issue because of these reasons. It's social networking, there's a lot of evils with it, but that just comes with education and and security of those companies. Company doesn't want to seen as a evil thing, so they change it to match the people. As long as the people are educated and watch enough sci-fi to make them fearful of technology, that'll push companies and governments to do the right thing. So there's that balance act.
I think when it comes to fear-mongering, you have to look at who is spreading the fear, who benefits from people being afraid of that, and how is it being used in a productive way. Okay, so maybe people are afraid of losing the ability to communicate freely online because of Article 13. Is it Article 13?
In the UK?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Remember.
Yes.
And that opens up very important discussions about being able to use the internet as freely as we do now without being penalized by some company who's saying that you're doing something that they have control over, and losing the free neutral internet, which is those are oxymorons in and of themselves.
Strike.
Yeah, but those important discussions are happening, and it's not just based off of fear. It's based off of real life consequences to the internet changing in that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's what if the music industry tried to go full crazy with internet or music theft through Napster and all that, so extreme protection of their material. The music industry still sucks, but there's ways for them to get money that's smarter and to give people access to music. Now I think places like Spotify, you can access music and movies a lot easier, and I think there's enough pushback against the music industry where the consumers don't want that much clout over, stuff they want to consume. They're going to stop buying music, the movies, because the free people need the free flow of information. So I feel like the UK is probably going to, once a case comes up where it's like, wow, you pushed really hard, government, maybe we shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, we need precedents. But the way that it has evolved, I would say even in the last 10 years, that is something that I wouldn't have predicted, but I honestly didn't really think too hard about it, is that media consumption became more of a subscription-based thing. So it's not, I paid for this CD, I paid for this DVD collection of this TV show, I paid for this movie. It's, I paid for this platform and I pay a regular price and I expect good media to come through. It's not necessarily I'm giving more money to this creator or this network or this company, which has its own implications in that is that money benefiting the people who actually created the content? How does that work with advertising networks, from show to show or from song to song? And are you getting what you need
it's
for your money?
Of that aspect, I think, is cyclical, because that's what,
cable.
You buy cable, you buy packages, and then you're paying money to all these channels that you don't really care for. And then, that's what Netflix wants to do. Oh, they want you to pay a package, and then you pay for all the content, even though there's some movies that you're like, why and did you create this garbage?
Which is what Netflix originals is such an interesting concept, and Hulu originals, and what's the other one? I don't know, but the
YouTube originals.
Yeah, YouTube Red, or paying for different networks.
I think there'll always be some form of subscription. We're big in the subscription now. We're like micro subscriptions. MeUndies.
Yeah. Oh yeah, even like services,
underwear.
Different. My toothbrush is a subscription. I get replacement toothbrush heads on a monthly basis, or maybe it's every other month. I don't know. But like everything is like, we're meant to have this sense that we are the curators of our lives and that we are picking and choosing the high quality things that we care about to come to us, and that all of the chaff is being eliminated and we're not even seeing it. It's filtering out.
Yeah, I do like that. Like, I like one individual product I can subscribe to, because I use 100% of that feature. It's when things starting to get diluted, it's like, oh, well, you're also paying for this other stuff. Well, I don't want that other stuff. Can I just pay a little bit more for that one thing?
Yeah.
I think that's very profitable, and I think the internet is allowing that to be more possible. Where it didn't, I think before the internet, you couldn't really have that. I mean, you could do like mail order stuff.
It was a thing. It was like, I subscribe to this monthly fruit basket or something.
Yeah, I guess.
It was so much cheesier, and I think I worry about that happening now.
But it's so hard to like cancel out of those.
Oh my God, yeah. I had one that was for like beauty products. There's more modern ones now, like Ipsy and BoxyCharm, where you pay $20 a month. And I thought about doing this because it's a good way to passively buy makeup without spending tons of money. But there's also this concern that I have where you think that because it is convenient and because it's new and because it's the first thing to do this, that therefore it's the best. Like, take MeUndies, for example. MeUndies are great, and they have a brand new
Please sponsor us.
They have a brand new way to market where nobody has ever offered underwear subscription. And so they were the first people to come on YouTube shows and podcasts and say, this is the modern underwear. It's 3 times softer than cotton. It's micromodal fabric. We have the pitch for MeUndies memorized because so many influencers were sponsored by MeUndies. And then you think to yourself, is it really the only brand of underwear that's 3 times softer than cotton? No, it's not. It's just the only brand of underwear that's marketing specifically to our demographic. So we believe that MeUndies is the best underwear. I'm not saying it's not, but also I have no awareness of any other nice underwear out there. If you had asked me...
They have otters on underwear. I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's a little gimmicky, the patterns and stuff, but we love it. We eat that shit for breakfast. Like, if you had asked me 2 years ago, would you spend $20 on underwear if you got it from a nice store? I would have said, absolutely not. That's something that rich people do. That's something that people who are like fashion obsessed and need a reason to spend money on something. But they sold me this narrative where I am the one who's making the smart decision to subscribe to this indie company that's going to send me the most technologically advanced underwear technology with the imagery on it that I prefer. Like, it's because it's not an old school brand. Like, it's not Calvin Klein or Gucci or something telling me that I want it.
That, you know, is more accessible.
It's more accessible, and it is audience participation.
So what do you think the future of that will be? I kind of wanted to go back to Star Citizen.
Oh, yeah. No, let's rant about underwear for another 10 minutes.
No, it's interesting because, like, in Star Citizen, you can buy clothing items for yourself, but, like, you have to go to a physical store and do the purchase. And I'm like, wait a second, this seems so counterintuitive.
Backwards.
You should be able to go on your, I don't know, your wristwatch thingy, hologram thing, and buy
summon
stuff.
Underwear to you.
Yeah, and have it delivered directly to your ship or...
I actually read something about that today,
condo.
Which I went, because I started on TV tropes, because I love TV tropes, and it's a wormhole.
Dark wormhole of despair.
But I was looking at kind of different tropes about the internet, and the first one that I saw was a TV trope article about cyberspace and how in sci-fi when there's like this character's going into cyberspace, or somebody gets like sucked into the internet, or you know, a show where the game is real life or something, the visual representation of cyberspace is always less convenient than the internet actually is, because it's made for the viewer. So, like, they had an example of, on a show, someone going to an online store and having to physically walk to it in the cyberspace environment. So it wasn't instant access to what they were looking for. And look at Ralph Wrecks the Internet, or Ralph Breaks the Internet, the sequel to Wreck-It Ralph, where they were going around in all these physical representations of popular websites, but they still had to physically travel there.
Yeah, it's always interesting how, like, movies are interpreting these things, because it would be so boring watching someone quick and buy an item they want, and you're like, oh well, I'm done. It's coming to me immediately.
Yeah.
It's not exciting. It's not
I know.
A story worth telling, or a worth filming or producing. They build a story around these ideas, so
that's
reality is going to be a lot more different than
a lot more boring to look at. But sci-fi is always going to be a little bit behind, because they have to show it in a physical way.
Yeah, I mean, so like in Star Citizen, it's not really interesting to just have a space station with no stores or anything. It's like, oh, you can do it all from your device, and you don't need to leave your ship ever. And the romantic aspect of space flying is completely lost.
Yeah.
Because of movies and TV shows that, you know,
have created these tropes. Which is why I would argue that the only true sci-fi... Okay, let me rephrase that. The most imaginative sci-fi is literature. Because
you mean
you're
more
not
imaginative or more realistic?
More imaginative.
So like
it's more theoretical, more, because you don't need to do that. You can do everything with words. So for example, there's this book series by Scott Westerfeld called Uglies, Pretties, and Specials. And it was a bit of a YA series, but the first one, Uglies, I won't go into the whole plot, but basically they have the internet in your brain. They have I can't remember if it's like an eye implant or something.
Sure.
But there's multiple descriptive passages where the main character is surfing the internet through her mind computer or whatever, and stuff happens on there. Like she's able to see updates. She's able to see like her social score, which impacts her rights and what she's able to do. I mean, it sounds cheesy, but it was actually really well done.
It just sounds horrible. Like you're being scored on your social life.
Yeah.
Anyways, but yeah.
Black Mirror did that too. But because it's a book and because the reader is reading it and imagining it themselves, it's not boring to sit there and read about a character being online in a non-physical way. But you can't do that.
But there's
TV.
Still a story, though. Like it was.
Oh yeah, it's not all of that. It's still a story, but that aspect of it was able to be a facet of the story, and it was allowed to be not a plot device, but it was allowed to accelerate and impact the plot in a way that didn't seem contrived because it was something that the reader is participating in imagining it. And
I think that's, books can definitely go into that type of detail and make it seem doesn't have to be as fantastic about it. But I think it's still like still interpretive, because like you're not going to want stuff bombarded in your eye all the time. You're not going to be able to drive or walk or anything. You just have to stand still and and do these things. You'd want that technology in your eye to be convenient. You want it to be like, buy me some underwear, and then the brain implant thing would do that while you're on the go.
Yep.
That's kind of like how Bluetooth technology is to enhance your actual life without obstructing it.
Yep, exactly. And I think that a lot of book to movie or book to TV show adaptations that fail because the way that the original story was written was not in a visual, it's not an actual physical visual way. And I think the internet suffers a lot as a storyline because it's such a non-corporeal thing.
Yeah, the internet's technology is supposed to make it convenient, and convenience is not as
sexy.
Not as exciting. So while I would like to see more convenient features in games like Star Citizen, but you kind of lose that aspect of the romantic aspect of going in, trying on clothes, buying these things.
Which is why VR becomes a thing and holograms become a thing. But I want to talk about Star Citizen in the time that we have left, and I want to talk about two aspects of Star Citizen. So I'm going to ask you to explain those two aspects, and then I want to bring up a possible theoretical thing that will make those two aspects kind of fit together. So first of all, I want you to talk about I don't know what it's called, but the ability in game to record things.
So like being that media, being like a reporter in space thing. Okay, so like the Reliant Mako, the ship, this game is heavily built around ships and first person interactions, I guess. So like, the Reliant Mako is supposed to be this ship to report on things.
It's like a press character.
Yeah, it's a press van basically. If we're going to turn one vehicle into another vehicle, it's a press van, and it's got this ship's got cameras on it, and you can record stuff and then ideally broadcast that to other people, and that's really cool concept because you can bring in live streaming aspects within the game. So you're not only recording, let's say there's a fictitious battle happening in the game, and you want to record it. You're like, these two organizations, clans, guilds, whatever, they're at war for each other for resources or something, and then you're like, I'm gonna go report on this, and then you could start filming that for like a battle reporter. What do they call them? Journalists, battle or wartime journalists? Or, yeah, and then they go in and record that. So, but then you also have, your webcam facing you.
You being the human you, the real you.
Yeah, the real human you. But then there's the VoIP technologies that they're...
VoIP?
Face over IP technologies that they have currently for multiplayer. I haven't tested it out, but, the camera scans your face and then interprets your facial muscles and movements and projects them into the game to other players. So other players don't actually see the real you. They see the character that you designed you.
And they also have VoIP.
Well, yeah, you got to have the voice translation too. I don't think they have like voice masking or anything. So it would be your voice.
I mean, never say never.
Yeah, but maybe you want to sound different if you're a female character.
For instance, you're a female player who doesn't want to sound like a female player while playing online.
Hey, that's actually yeah.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah. So you could and then so now you're in the Reliant Mako. You're reporting. You're broadcasting yourself, so you could control. Like in media, news organizations, they go to the situation, the battle, and there's a voiceover, and then they switch to you if you want to focus on your face and the reporting aspect of it, and then
so freaking
that's the recording aspect, and then the output of that would be on your device. I gotta remember names of things in games, but whatever, the wrist hologram thing, you can view recordings or view a live battle happening, but you're on the far side of the galaxy. You're in a distant system, so you can't actually physically view it, or you're on a planet, but you're still interested in this battle because you heard that this was going to happen outside of the game, but you want to be inside of the game doing stuff about it, or maybe you want to participate in the battle and you can get up to date on what's going on in the battle.
Or you could pilot remote drones to fight in the battle for you.
Yes. The remote drones. They don't have drones yet. They have AI. But yeah, I mean
I'm so excited for when I'm a grandmother and I can actually play this game. Sorry, but I have so many ideas, and I know that there's so many things on the list that even if my ideas became a reality, it would be forever. But I also have some predictions. I'm sorry, you can
I was just gonna say, so yeah, I mean that's like one aspect of the internet of the internet. Now you can watch news and sports and shows on the internet, so it would make sense for you as the player to tune into these things. I know in the episode of Star Citizen Live, there was a question about what do I do when traveling through space.
You're stepping on my idea.
Oh.
Okay, so here's where I'm going to cut in. And
what's
I'm gonna say,
your idea,
I
Lindsay?
just thought of this brilliant plan where, so there's this thing called voice over IP and face over IP, and there's this news van chip that can go and record things. My ultimate dream is for there to be an in-game streaming network where real players are creating real content, whether it be news over battlefields, whether it be ship tours, whether it be podcasts, what have you. And
so like Twitch streaming, but in-game.
Yes. In-game Twitch streaming, but not using the word Twitch because that's probably going to be a huge issue.
Whatever their name for it will be in the game.
But it'll be huge because gamers, especially people who would be interested in Star Citizen, are already consuming that content. There's already ship tours and Let's Plays. Do they even call them Let's Plays anymore?
No. I mean, that's just the genre.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the name of the genre. I don't know if they call them Let's Plays anymore in their titles.
But it would be in-game, and it would be in this network, and you would be incentivized to be widely viewed. So that's where the competition aspect comes in, where you try to be the person that reports in-game news, or the person, and the face-over interface and voice-over interface, face-over VoIP.
Say VoIP and VoIP.
VoIP and VoIP will become the next gaming animation. So people are going to create live shows, dramas, red versus blue type things, using their characters and their voices and the news van ship to record it.
Yeah.
So you're going to have fiction being streamed on this platform. And like I thought of by myself, you're going to consume this as a player when you're waiting to travel that 10 minutes from one place to the other. And you're going to give your views and your kudos and your stars and whatever to the content that you like. That'll benefit the person that's producing it. It'll translate to real in-game cash.
Think you could have an organization, a guild,
Yes.
that's just based on media reporting.
Yeah.
And you could have 24-hour reporting all the time.
You could have dance crews. You could have reality TV shows.
Morning shows that
could-
are really cringy.
There could be like
Yeah.
Survivor-esque game shows. The possibilities are limitless.
You can have. They already have racing in the game, so you could have.
Oh my god, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
But you could have battle. You could have like UFC type things.
Yeah, they're gonna have hand-to-hand combat. Well, I don't know if PvP hand combat, but they're gonna have hand-to-hand combat in the game.
Yeah.
So
You could film that. It could be like a tournament type thing. You could have ship tournaments where you try to blow up each other's ship, and there's like a real audience watching you do this.
right.
Like, why even play the
well,
game?
I mean, they're starting to do that already. They're doing that, but like through YouTube and
Yeah,
other
exactly.
streaming services.
Through external, you have to stop playing the game in order to consume content about the game. And I'm saying that the future of gaming, pioneered by this game, is going to be where all forms of gaming consumption happen within the same universe and the same platform.
I want to play a game within the game.
Yeah, I mean, other games do that too, where you can play like,
I want to play Star Citizen within Star Citizen,
do it. Follow your dreams.
and then I'll play Star Citizen in that game. It'd be game Inception.
Okay, you're making fun of me right now, but this is huge.
I know.
This
This idea is huge. They gotta implement.
They hinted at it though. The
They need
Star
to-
Citizen
yeah.
Live thing that we just watched. Someone asked the question.
No, they didn't answer the question.
No.
They're like, we're not gonna tell you anything because we haven't, solidified that plan.
Because they
yet."
said it was going to be so huge. We're going to zig or we're going to zag. I think either zig or zag is this idea of the in-game video.
I think maybe
network.
the plans for that. I don't think they're going. They're going to probably keep it simple.
Well, yeah,
but-
because another hurdle about this that we'll have to get over is that it's going to have to only be live content first. But the thing that I'm really excited about is the idea of being able to create fiction using the VoIP and the FOIP. That you can't really do successfully without multi-camera and without editing.
Yeah.
I think it's possible to make an in-game video editor that doesn't suck because there are a lot of apps now that have in-game clip editors.
Oh yeah. I mean,
that
they're going to
aren't-
have gameplay aspects if they're going to have like this media van to be able to do that. I mean, looking at this image, there's a computer station for you to do these things.
Yeah.
So, totally looking forward. And that's just one small aspect.
I
So
know.
many gameplay elements.
We should start a podcast about it.
Weird. What to call it?
I'm really excited about that though, because I think it's a direction that people are already going to naturally go into, because after Let's Plays and live streams and Twitch and all of that stuff, that aspect of gaming is not going to go away. People are always going to like watching other people play games
Yeah.
in the most broad sense. But also there is an entire medium genre of gaming videos that's people creating content based off of the animations of the game. There's so many animations based on like Halo characters or or using a voiceover from a TV show and putting in the actions of the game.
So you're saying like actually produce like
Red versus Blue.
Red versus Blue, or a sitcom.
Yeah, exactly.
Within the game while they're playing, and then
which I'm sorry is going to start with porn, because porn is the innovator of all media.
Well, if it's been thought about, there's already a porn about it. So I mean that's just the role of the internet.
Yep.
Since we're talking about the internet, should we end on that note?
Porn.
Thank you for joining us. But yeah, I think that's the end of our time. So
this is such a complex discussion, and it's so fun to talk about this stuff, and we could be way off and we could be quoting things wrong and all of that thing, but like even just being able to talk about this in a way that makes sense to us and fits the narrative of what we're trying to do, whether it's in game or talk about the future of the internet and all that stuff, like it's never going to be a boring thing, at least for us.
No, and I always like bringing it around to Star Citizen because they are not promising it, but they have the capability of doing all these science fiction things, being able to predict the future of communication and how you want to consume information, and you can experience that through the lens of the game.
Yep, it all goes back to Star Citizen because it's not finished yet, and because we're right at the tipping point of the technology that they're able to use, and we're at the peak of gamer participation where people are able to put in their real feedback and say, I want to be able to do this. So that's why we're a part of this discussion. We want to be able to say, hey,
and hopefully influence the discussion too in some way.
That would be
maybe
dope.
In the future. Yeah. Yeah, man.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening.
See you next week. We don't know what we're going to talk about next week, but it'll be fun.
It will be.